Make me quit? Get reported for your illegal company practices. Posted by Paco the Fox. In all honesty, this account is mostly a throwaway to distance myself from my main account where I still talk to people in the area this happened. On one hand, given the time that's passed since this particular revenge happened, I could probably get away with it. But on the other hand, there's a chance that this could come back to bite me. It's not that I did anything illegal, but many may argue it was morally wrong at the time, and I probably could have handled the situation a whole heck of a lot better. So, on to the story. At one point in my life, I found myself bored. I needed spending cash, but at the same time, like any typical college student, I needed a job that would work around my class hours. Enter C Corp, not the real name. C Corp was a locally owned chain of gas stations in the southeastern part of Georgia and parts of Florida. I forget the total number of stations, but it was under 50 if that matters. I applied and was given a simple clerking position where I would work weekends and 2 nights a week, for a total of about 32 hours a week on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. I worked there for about a year when I was offered a position to help reopen a store that was renovated after a fire, with the promotion to assistant manager. My hours were going to obviously change, but by the same token, I gained better pay and a new day shift which would help things out. To be quite honest, I even debated taking some time off from school to concentrate on the job, as it was entirely possible I would be promoted to manager of my own store before long. There were veiled hints and suggestions of that very thing happening in a few months, as it were. I never got that far, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. It didn't take long for me to start noticing some issues with the store and the company as a whole. Issues which I did my level best to correct. We were nearing hunting season, turkey and then deer, and in an effort to cater to this, the store started getting in several pallets of ammunition. So, now we had to figure out how to display the various types of shells and bullets, while also doing our level best to ensure things didn't get in the way. It was around this time that I found myself speaking with the store manager, having been called on the carpet, as the saying goes, for refusing to sell ammunition to a customer. I explained to the manager that I had attempted to check ID on the customer, who refused to give it. So, I told the manager that I knew full well this was illegal, as ID was required by state law, and furthermore, you had to be 18 to buy them. That started me on the path that would lead to my termination a few weeks later. I started noticing company memos popping up in the office, all that dealt with company practices regarding ammunition. One even went so far as to say it was a terminable offense to refuse a sale of shells to a customer, regardless of age. That one actually vanished a few days after it went up, with me suspecting someone in the legal department realized the trouble they could get into with it. However, the flow of ammo didn't stop. A week before my termination, things got worse. The state in question has the lottery, of which the lion's share is scratch-off tickets. You know the type. Pay $1, scratch off, and hope you win something. Now, the lottery states on the back of every single ticket that the retailer who sold it must pay up to $599 in winnings. Anything above that has to be claimed at the central lottery office in the state's capital. Retailers are warned that should they refuse to pay this, there are instructions on how to do this with the money order, then they can be fined by the lottery commission, or worse. Imagine my surprise then when I'm written up for following the lottery commission policy and paying out on a $300 win for a customer. I was told, point blank, that company policy was not to pay out anything more than $100, regardless of what the lottery commission said. The final straw before my eventual termination, though honestly I quit, they still listed me as terminated, came up when training another cashier. The very next day, the count came up short by exactly $100. I refused to sign the write-up, which meant the company would have to investigate it, or so I thought. Same day, the district manager called the store and made some veiled threats about calling the police over this, and left me with a note that, quote, "If the count comes up $100 over today, he won't say anything," end quote. Oh, heck no, he didn't. I waited till the manager returned from her meeting, dropped all my keys on the counter, and told her directly, "I'm done." I walked out and didn't really look back. I was ticked. Ticked at the treatment I'd been given over my time working there, ticked at being called a thief, ticked at what I knew the company was doing to my little community, and ticked that as far as I could tell, they'd get away with it. That's when I hatched a plan of revenge. First and foremost, I needed to talk with a friend. One of my college buddies also worked for the county sheriff's office, so I plied him over with some good barbecue and a few beers, and then asked him, hypothetically speaking, what would happen to a company if it was found they were doing something illegal, like selling ammunition when they shouldn't be, or something like that. He knew I'd recently left C Corp and the circumstances of why I left, so it didn't take long for him to ask just what was going on. I spilled the beans, even including the reported theft I'd been accused of. He was on the edge of his seat, even going so far as to note that my district manager's actions itself were illegal, and told me to come meet with my friend's boss the next day to give a statement. So I did just that. I laid out everything, told about the memo, about not refusing sales against state law, and then gave detailed information about the DM's call, the incident itself, and the other things I'd witnessed regarding illegal practices by the company, though not mentioned here. It took the better part of 4 hours to get everything told and typed out. By the way the detective acted, I got the impression I had either given him one heck of a caseload or broken some case right open. Fun. However, I wasn't really done yet. I had one more call to make. That one would prove pretty simple and short, and involves me calling the Lottery Commission and telling them about the company's policy which went against the lottery agreement. I was assured they'd look into things, and that my information would be kept secret. I just had to sit back and wait. The fallout. 2 or 3 weeks later, our local paper ran a story on the front page talking about a multiple department sting that happened in our area. The sting was investigating illegal sales of weapons, alcohol, and ammunition to minors. In that raid, C Corp had been hit hard, with several of their stores being shut and several managers and district managers being arrested on various charges tied to this illegal activity. The company was facing severe, in the 7-figure range, fines from the state, and it was being called into question whether or not they had the proper license to sell ammunition and pew-pews, as they're called, in the first place. The only mention about what the DM had said to me came in the form of one of the investigating officers noting that the company had resorted to blackmail in an attempt to silence anyone who dared question the company policy or practices. The stores did remain open, but you could tell that the managers were seriously nervous about what the future held. Sales of ammunitions and pew-pews stopped completely and overnight though. About a week after the raid by the police, lottery tickets of all kinds simply vanished from the stores. Big signs out front simply read, "We do not sell lotto." The validation machines were gone. The scratch-off ticket areas lay empty. Lottery was not in the building. I can only guess what happened in that case, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Lottery Commission sent people in with winning tickets only to have those people turned away. The fact that they lost their lottery sales would point to it being a serious issue at the very least. That or the Lottery Commission decided to distance themselves from the company, which was already under federal investigation. Yes, the ammunition and the pew-pews thing went federal. Ultimately, the company was a shell of its former self. About half the gas stations ended up closing due to no longer being profitable, and what stations didn't close were just shells of their former selves. The company eventually declared bankruptcy after a final scandal brought them another round of state and federal fines. In that case, they were busted for price gouging after raising the gas price per gallon to about $6 a gallon in cities where they had no other competition. This happening just prior to a pending tropical storm. Today, it's been close to 15 years since this all went down. C Corp doesn't exist any longer. After declaring bankruptcy, most of the stores were sold off to a competitor who ended up closing all but 5 or 6 of the stores due to redundancies. A whole host of, honestly, innocent people ended up out of work simply because the store decided to F over one guy who wanted to do the right thing by law and state policies. Several of the corporate staff were given 2 and 3 year suspended sentences, while others ended up paying personal fines on top of what the company was facing. The company has become something of a warning to others about what not to do when an employee voices a concern, and above and beyond that, why it's a good idea to follow the letter of the law exactly as it's written, regardless of if it hinders your bottom line or not. I sometimes think back on the whole affair and wonder just what they hoped to achieve with that blackmail attempt. Some part of me thinks that the DM honestly thought it was the best option and may have even been trying to help out an employee he liked. That was something that always bugs me looking back. Every interaction I had with the guy was a good one, right up to him grooming me to be another store manager. So maybe he was trying to protect me. Then again, he could have just been the a-hole that I assumed, and that was him showing his true colors. I guess we'll never know. He moved out of the area a few years later, and I sure as heck wasn't about to talk to him again. Not after everything that had happened. Wow, now this is a nuclear one, OP, because the entire company, 7-figure fines, bringing them all down, destruction, and just waylaying everything. I have to say, the power of one man here truly brought nuclear revenge. Evil Stepfather, posted by Kveldson. When I was 15, my mom started dating a man she met on a dating website. I didn't like him the first time I met him, and 2 months later, he moved into the house. About 3 weeks after he moved in, he took my skateboards, self-built half-pipe, ramps, BMX bike, ice hockey gear, and many other things to the dump one day while I was at school. He said he did this because he didn't want all of my crap cluttering up his garage. Maybe 2 months later, he punched me in the stomach for the first time because I got up from the dinner table without asking to be excused. From there, it escalated into full-fledged beatdowns for the smallest perceived slight to his authority. One day, he decided to take my extensive Pokemon card collection, even more extensive comic book collection, my Game Boy and PS2 with all the assorted games, and my fantasy and sci-fi book collection, and got rid of all of it because 15-year-old boys should be playing football and baseball, not being a bundle of sticks nerd playing Pokemon cards, reading comics and books. I would like to add that he was a middle school teacher, and then his off-time refereed and umpired local middle and high school sports games. My mom never intervened, and in fact, acquiesced when he demanded that she stop giving me lunch money because the little jerk would just spend it on comics and other crap. One day, I took maybe $3 and change out of his change jar so that I can buy a slice of pizza and some fruit punch during lunch at school because I was tired of being hungry. My twin sister was always a bit of an a-hole and frequently blackmailed me into doing her chores from a young age. I was fed up and refused to do something, so she told him what I'd done. This man actually called the police and pressed a larceny charge against me, and once the police had left, beat me senseless. At that point, I ran away. When the cops found me and returned me to my home, I found out that he'd been trying to talk to my mom into sending me away to military school or something of that nature. I ran away again, and between having run away several times and the larceny charge, ended up turning 16 in juvenile detention. I spent the next couple of years being miserable and afraid, frequently contemplating permanent self-harm. Once I left home, I didn't speak to my mom for several years. We eventually reconciled, and by that point, they had married. I was a lot bigger then, as I had been a young teenager and had gotten into weightlifting, so he no longer acted like he was going to punch me to make me flinch, much less actually hit me, and we basically avoided each other for the most part. My mother found out that she had stage 4 cancer and no longer wanted to waste any of the time she had left with him. So she had a lawyer draft up a separation agreement whereby he would receive a set amount of money upon separation and would have 45 days to retrieve his belongings from the house. He had spent his entire inheritance in 6 months and then had to sell his mother's house that he grew up in order to settle his debts shortly before they started dating. Oh, and my mother bought the house back from the bank before they married. She allowed him to keep the house and he moved back into his mother's house. My mother passed away about 9 months after their separation, and despite the agreement, have been allowing him to come and get his stuff piecemeal. I put an immediate end to that. I sold his baseball card collection, which was worth around $14,000, and his autographed sports memorabilia, roughly $11,000, and also sold all of his woodworking equipment, along with several finished pieces of furniture that he had made, around $6,500, I think. I kept his mother's engagement ring, a platinum band, 3 diamonds, roughly 2 carats, a wedding band, his coin collection, as I also collect coins, and some tools and other odds and ends. Around a month ago, I ran into him at the grocery store. I told him what I had done as he was pushing his cart out towards the car, and he took a swing at me multiple times. Several of these punches missed, and the ones that did connect didn't have much effect because he's nowhere near as strong as he was 20 years ago in his 40s, and I'm no longer a skinny little 15-year-old. He continued to try to punch me as I called 911 and was actively ramming his grocery cart into my new Toyota as the police officers pulled into the parking lot. He was arrested for assault, communicating threats, and destruction of property. As a result, he lost his job and pension at the local middle school, and because he had never learned how to save money while married to my somewhat wealthy mother, ended up having to sell his mother's house because he hired an expensive lawyer, thinking he could somehow beat the charges. My nephew, who was on the football team, made it well known to his friends that he not only had just been arrested and convicted of assault as well as other charges, but that he had also beat me as a child, caused several parents to call for him to resign from refereeing and umpiring for local sports games. My niece and my girlfriend's much younger sister are enrolled at the middle school where he worked and say that he was not only universally disliked, but when he came up to the school to get his belongings, he made a big scene and ended up hysterically crying as he was leaving. At least that's what they've heard from the kids who were attending summer school at that time. His son, who he was equally abusive towards as a child, refused to take him in or to help him out, so he ended up having to take a job as a cashier at Walmart so that he could afford the rent on his crappy little trailer in an absolutely awful neighborhood. Even though that Walmart is not the closest Walmart to my house, that is now the only place where I go grocery shopping or to purchase anything that I need. I purposely stand in line longer than I need to, just so that he can be the one who has the pleasure of ringing up my purchases. The first time I went through his line, he attempted to ring up multiple items more than one time to overcharge me, and when I called him on it, he said that I was mistaken. I asked for a manager, and the manager believed him that it was an accident, but he learned that he can't get away with that. The second time, I made sure to be as nice as possible and how to ask for a manager because he was overwhelmingly rude. The people in line behind me backed me up, and he got in some trouble for that. Every time I go there and step into line, I see him die a little bit inside, and it may be petty, but it gives me such satisfaction. Sometimes I'll say that I'm paying with exact change, and as I'm about to hand him the money, I'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize that I had a rare coin from his collection in my pocket. I guess I'll pay cash." I just sold his expensive ratcheting wrench set, and so on Monday when he works again, I'm going to go buy my daughter one of their better above ground pools, and as he's ringing it out, tell him, "I know that daughter is just going to love this pool. It's not like I would have ever used those expensive ratcheting wrenches anyway." Man, if you're going to go to these extents and be this awful of a person, you do not need to be working at a middle school. So hey, I think that he should have more punishment. It's good that he's out there, but you know what? He needs to learn. Do you think I'm right or do you think I'm wrong? Comment below and let me know. Be sure to comment the secret phrase below. Boom! Because that's sure as heck what happened here. I'm Austin, check out another video here, and I'll see you later.